Hey everybody out there, Rumblin Man here. Thanks for tuning in today to part one of my new series, and this series is Essentials for the Gigging Bassist. This series will be geared toward beginning players who are starting to play gigs. In addition to that, intermediate players who need a little more information about playing by ear, things like learning the number system, learning what to do on stage, how to fit into a gig situation that you'd usually be uncomfortable with. Also for advanced players who are getting into playing out more, there will be some words of wisdom in here for you. I'm not a flag waver for my resume. I'll just give you a little background. I started playing bass shortly before high school, and I learned several instruments: guitar and piano and drums and bass. Bass eventually became the main thing. In high school, I would play in church praise and worship bands, and also being raised here in Franklin, Tennessee, I played in country music some and pop music. And then in adulthood, I was playing guitar for a long time, but bass kind of became my thing again, and I played for a couple artists here in the Nashville area. And then I got a road gig with a gospel group, and I played bass there, also sang. And then while I was on the road, I met the woman who's now my wife, and I fell in love with her. So I moved to the Seattle area. And when I got there, I really wanted to get involved with the local music scene because of just how cool it is. And so I got involved as a bass player, and I played in 3 bands, I think. And I also did studio work. In a city like Seattle, it's a lot easier to find work playing music than it is in a city where there's tons and tons and tons of music, or a city where there's not much music at all. And what occurred to me as I was gigging was this, is that, whatever defines you as a professional player, most people say it's when you get paid regularly to do it. Okay, well, I'm not here to talk about being a professional player today. I'm here to talk about being a professional level player, on the level with people who are pros, whether you get paid or not for your gigs. You want to be able to get on what defines you as being a professional level player to me is when you can get on stage one night in a band setting with your bass, and you can play songs that you've never played and never heard, and nobody would ever know the difference. Or when you can get into a recording studio situation, sit down with a chord chart or number chart, and sit down and play on songs you've never heard before and do a great job and make friends with the producer and the engineer. Those are the things that make you a professional level player. And I'm starting this video series to help you get there. It's mainly going to be for live musicians, and we'll cover some studio things as well. Today we're going to talk about reading hand. Let's say you're on stage, you've got your bass, you're doing a gig. Now this could be anything. It can be a reggae gig, it can be a church gig, it can be anything. And the song begins, you don't have a chart, or maybe you have a number chart and you need to figure out what key you're in or what. And you can't find, you're fiddling around, you can't find the key. Familiarize yourself, before you get into that situation, familiarize yourself with what chords look like on the guitar and on the piano. For instance, you want to be able to, if you've got your bass, this is a guitar, obviously. This is the first guitar I ever bought, so it's sitting here. If you're playing bass, you want to be able to look over at the guitar player and look at his hand and be able to see what chord he's playing. Then you know, okay, that's where we're at. And then you can easily find your way, right? This is always going to be a G chord. It can also be played like this. A C chord will look like this. Or some people will play like this. Maybe it could be like this. Maybe it could be barred up here. This is going to be a D. This is going to be an A. Some guitarists play like that. This is going to be an E. This is going to be an E. Familiarize yourself, and then if it's barred like this, and it's a minor, that's going to be a C sharp minor. Familiarize yourself with what the chords look like on the guitar. And so get to a point where you can read a guitar player's hand. You can look at the guitar player's hand, see what chord he's playing, and then adjust. And that's not hard to do. It just comes with experience. And me, because I learned guitar, obviously, I can look over and see that if a guy is playing C and he's playing an F, and a G and there's an A minor in there, then I know we're in the key of C because those are the home chords. Then I know where I can do fills, you know. And we'll get into all that stuff at a later time as well. Learn to read a guitar player's hand. Also, a piano player. Like, let's say you're playing in a band with a piano or keyboard player. This is a little more tricky. But the thing is that the piano player's left hand, and generally their pinky or their thumb, with their left hand, they're almost always going to be playing the root note, the home note that you need to be playing. So familiarize yourself with the notes of the piano, the notes of the keyboard, where you can look at that and say, oh, that's that note, that's a G, that's an F. Not necessarily the chords as much. I mean, that would really help you, but the notes. So where you can look at a keyboard player's hand and see, okay, I see his thumb and pinky doing an octave on the C note, so I'm supposed to be playing a C. You get to a point where when you can read hand, when you can read a guitar player's hand, read a piano player's hand, it will help you in picking up songs on the spot. When I was in Seattle and went out to some towns kind of outside of the Seattle area and was playing with a band I played with a lot, but they decided to bust out some covers on this one night. Well, I didn't know these covers. I had kind of heard them. And when you get really familiar, you can hear it. Like, you know, I can hear this, and I can know that's a D chord. You know, but you don't have to have perfect pitch. You just need familiarity. But I did a couple things to get through the night. For one, I'd figure out what key we were in. You get to a point where you can kind of anticipate, you can kind of feel when it's going to the fourth. Like, let's say you're playing in the key of D. The 4 chord is G. You can kind of feel when it's going to go into a G, and you can go on and play that F sharp like you're leading up. If you accidentally hit the wrong note, though, it's not the end of the world. Correct yourself. It'll be okay. The audience, most of the time, they won't know the difference, especially for a bass player. Guys on stage will, but don't worry about that. Hey, they're going to mess up too. So don't be afraid to mess up. You need these adventures. You need the mistakes. You need the knowledge. You need the adventure to form you into the gigging bass player that you need to be. And what helped me through those gigs was being able to pick it up by ear, to know what chords go in what keys, which is what we'll talk about on the next video. And in addition to that, I needed to be able to look at the guitar player's hand and say, okay, he's playing a G right now. Or when he was playing keyboard, okay, that's an F, and there's an A minor, so I think we're in the key of C. Familiarity with what chords look like on the guitar and on the piano will help you in a gigging situation catch on to songs that you don't know. And I'll tell you, that night was out in, I believe it was Sultan, Washington, and I wasn't crazy about the gig, but I'll tell you this, I walked away from that gig with a great sense of, not pride. I don't think pride is a good character trait to try to have, but fulfillment and just really fulfillment because I had achieved a new level of skill. I was on a stage and I picked up songs. I hadn't even heard them before and no one knew the difference. I did it. You can do it too. And that will define you as a professional level bass player. And that will define you as a bass player that people are going to want to have on their gigs in the future. So learn to read hand. See you in the next lesson.